The Russian dictator Putin seems to be about to get what he has always wanted and what he has been striving for throughout the entire war against Ukraine. Donald Trump recently announced that on Monday, the 19th of May, he will personally call the Russian dictator to discuss the issue of resolving Russia's war against Ukraine. In addition, Trump says that he really wants a personal meeting with Putin and will negotiate with him about it. But right now, many analysts and experts are saying that a meeting between Trump and Putin is the worst nightmare for Ukraine, because Kyiv fears the breakdown of a peace agreement in the event of a meeting between Putin and Trump. But the United States claims that this is supposedly the only way to achieve a breakthrough. And so, European leaders hoped that the Russian president's absence from the peace talks with Ukraine in Istanbul, those very talks that Putin himself had demanded, instead of a ceasefire, it will finally make Donald Trump's patience snap. Unfortunately, that didn't occur. We will discuss what happens next in this episode. My name is Pechiy. Today is May 17th. Before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and be sure to write a comment under this episode. How do you feel about Donald Trump's idea to meet with Putin? Also subscribe to the Telegram channel Pechiy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we promptly publish news as soon as it comes in. Let's go over everything step by step. Instead of demonstrating their desire to join Europe and finally impose much tougher sanctions against Moscow, United States President Donald Trump decided, in fact, to reward his Russian counterpart with a personal meeting, something Putin had wanted for so long. Nothing will happen until Putin and I meet. Donald Trump stated this, thus effectively halting the negotiations in Istanbul even before they began. The Ukrainian and Russian delegations hadn't even begun negotiations yet in Istanbul, making this a telling moment. And Trump had already spoken, while in Qatar, and said that yes, nothing would come out of it. It's clear why Putin didn't fly. I didn't fly either, and he was going to fly only if I went, but I never said I would go there, although actually I did say it. And then he said that everything would be decided only at our personal meeting, so there was no point in holding anything in Istanbul at all. In Putin's eyes, personal negotiations with the President of the United States, a meeting where Volodymyr Zelensky, the President of Ukraine, would not be invited, would solidify Russia's status as a great power. Putin had long strived for Americans and Russians to share this world, so to speak. And this is exactly what Trump is trying to arrange for Putin. It would be reminiscent of the superpower summits during the Cold War, when Moscow and Washington met as equals to discuss the fate of the planet. So it seems that Putin has achieved this. This result, as they say, worries Ukrainian officials more than anything else. At such a meeting, Putin will have Trump's undivided attention without any intermediary who could defend Ukrainian interests. That is, this is exactly the moment when Putin can feed Donald Trump all the nonsense he has without any filter. Ukrainian officials fear that the result will be that the impressionable Donald Trump, whose instincts often seem more sympathetic to Russia, will agree to a deal that will then be presented to Ukraine. As a done deal, simply. I want to emphasize one crucial point. Putin publicly and demonstratively disregarded President Trump. He rejected his peace plan. He rejected his proposal for a 30-day ceasefire. He completely disregarded the energy truce that Trump boasted about so much. He announced that there could be a ceasefire regime in the Black Sea. But right away, he put forward conditions to Trump that Trump cannot fulfill alone without Europe. That is, he publicly humiliated the American president, and there were hopes that after all this, Trump would not reward Putin's intransigence by agreeing to meet with him. But unfortunately, Trump apparently rejects such characterizations. He sees the situation differently. Based on his reasoning, direct conversation with Putin is the sole method to grasp his desires and the extent of concessions he's prepared to make. As Trump said, quote, "We will meet with him, and I think we will solve this issue. Or maybe not, at least we will know." Putin is undoubtedly delighted with such a turn of events. This is not only another sign of Trump's condescension toward him, but also another humiliation for European leaders, who expected that the United States president would respond to his absence from the negotiations by approving tougher sanctions. This is a humiliation for Macron, Starmer, Donald Tusk, Friedrich Merz, Vladimir Zelensky, who over the weekend on May 10th stated that the ceasefire should be on May 12th. They had a phone call with Trump, and Trump supported this idea. Then Putin comes out and says, let's have negotiations in Istanbul, which in fact never took place. And Trump says, by the way, yes, let's have negotiations. I agreed, but then he changed his mind. This is humiliating for the European partners, I stress. That's how Trump treats his allies. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, announced that the European Union is preparing the next set of sanctions against Russia on top of the package agreed upon earlier this week. The 18th sanctions package is underway. I have a separate episode about the 17th package on my channel, so check it out and subscribe if you haven't already. There was hope that Trump would at least give the go-ahead to United States Senator Lindsey Graham to introduce a bill in Congress that would impose a 500% tariff on any country buying Russian oil, which could harm the Russian economy. But even this is unlikely to happen, at least until Trump meets personally with Putin. Well, and although Trump said that he would meet with his counterpart as soon as we can arrange it, the Kremlin is clearly indicating that it is not in a hurry to organize this meeting. Peskov, who is Putin's press secretary, welcomed the proposal but was quick to characterize it as a summit. He stressed the paramount importance of this. However, Peskov also cautioned against expecting a meeting in the near future, adding that lengthy and intensive preparations would be required before these two men could meet. Meanwhile, the most immediate consequence of Trump's proposal was that the peace talks in Istanbul, which were supposed to be a historic moment, turned into almost insignificant secondary events. Absolutely. United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio predicted their failure even before these talks began. Before the talks began, he said that he didn't think anything truly productive would actually happen. Quote, I think it's absolutely obvious that the only way to achieve a breakthrough here is negotiations between President Trump and President Putin. Well, and also the absence of pressure with the aim of making any concessions. The Russian delegation, led by former Minister of Culture Vladimir Medinsky, provoked the anger of their Ukrainian counterparts by putting forward demands that went beyond all of Ukraine's red lines. Medinsky led negotiations with the Ukrainian delegation at the start of the 2022 war, which quickly fell apart. After Russia demanded that Zelensky abandon his ambitions to join NATO, disband most of his armed forces, and accept conditions that, in Kyiv's opinion, would have turned the country into a vassal. At the negotiations on Friday, the Russian negotiators not only insisted on the same conditions, and they went even further, demanding that Ukraine completely withdraw its troops from 4 eastern regions that, according to Russia, it has supposedly already annexed, even though it has never even occupied most of the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions. Let me remind you that Russian troops occupy large parts of the Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions, but do not have undisputed control over any of the 4 regions. And Russia fully controls only Crimea, which is the 5th region it has also declared as its own. Moscow also brushed off Zelensky's accusation that its negotiators did not come to Istanbul in good faith. And there, Mashka Zakharova, the press drunkard of the Russian Foreign Ministry, in response called the Ukrainian leader a clown, a loser, and an uneducated person. And in all this atmosphere, Trump says, I really want to meet with Putin. This is very dangerous rhetoric when the leader of a big, great country, the United States of America, so openly declares that I really want to meet with Putin, I really want to. Everything else doesn't matter as long as I can meet. So I'll call him myself, I'll talk to him myself on Monday, and then we'll try to arrange a meeting. What are Russians doing? Russians say, maybe a little later we'll arrange such a meeting. There's no need to hurry. The war is still going on. Let's wait until Trump humiliates himself even more. Let him offer some more concessions. There's no need to agree right away. And as sad as it is to admit, this strategy works. If you see that your opponent is just desperately eager to meet with you and you need concessions from him, drag out the time. This is basic logic, drag out the time, because if he really wants to meet, he will make concessions. Trump, to my great regret, doesn't even try to hide it. He says directly that he wants to meet. What other concessions are needed? And here's the interview on the Pokazateli television channel. I analyzed it in detail on my own channel, so go there and be sure to watch it. There were such phrases from Trump that it was hard to imagine coming from the mouth of an American president. But here I'll leave it at that. Write your opinion and your conclusions about this story in the comments, subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and don't forget to give a like. That's all. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.